Joining us now from Canberra is Independent Senator Nick Xenophon. Senator Xenophon, good morning to you. Now, this discussion paper recommends legalising some forms of online gambling, such as poker, which are already popular. So what is wrong with that?
Well, quite a few things are wrong with it. Firstly, we're already the world's #1 gamblers in terms of per capita gambling losses, #1 in terms of problem gambling. The Productivity Commission did recommend a couple of years ago a managed liberalisation of online gambling, but the problem with that is that you'll see more and more people falling by the wayside, because the Productivity Commission itself has acknowledged the more accessible a form of gambling is, the bigger the problems. And by giving it the seal of approval of the Australian government, you will see more people flocking to local sites, and with it, the problems that arise from that.
But what do you say to the argument put up that already Australians spend in excess of $1 billion on these illegal online sites? Greater regulations could help curb the issue of problem gambling and, in a sense, taming the devil we know.
Well, Michael, that's why this report is so illogical and inconsistent, because when you read between the lines, it doesn't make sense. Firstly, the billion-dollar figure is untested, but even if it was anything approaching that, the report recommends measures to nip online gambling transactions and overseas sites in the bud in terms of restricting financial transactions. That is something that should have been done years ago, something I've been calling for years. So if they're concerned about that leakage, they can actually stop that or significantly reduce it by making it more difficult for financial transactions to take place overseas.
Is it that easy, though, for those financial transactions to be curbed by the banks here?
Well, yes, it is, because the evidence given to the Joint Committee on Gambling Reform by the Australian Bankers Association, no less, was that there is a merchant blacklist that can be used, can be expanded for online gambling sites. It would make it much more difficult for these operators to do their business if we simply do what the report is recommending. The report is really quite flawed and inconsistent in the sense that it says we can do all these things for online gambling sites overseas to stop them, but they're not actually doing it now. And if you accept that we already have a massive problem in this country with problem gambling, why make it worse?
One thing which you would support coming out of this report is the recommendation to ban all forms of so-called micro-betting, that is, betting ball by ball on football or point by point on tennis matches.
Sure, and that's very important from a sports integrity point of view in terms of match fixing. But in the scheme of things, I take the micro-betting ban as a micro-win, because the tenor of the report is very concerning in the sense that this is about opening up online gambling. The online gambling operators and people like James Packer, who's got an interest in Betfair, I think will be cheering from the sidelines on this.
Well, speaking of James Packer, as you'd be aware, his hostile takeover bid for the Star Casino in Sydney is still very much in the news this morning. He wants Jeff Kennett installed as Star Casino chairman if he wins control of that casino. Is it a good thing, in your view, for one person to potentially own so many casinos in the country?
Well, no. As a general principle, I think when you see an aggregation of market power, it is very concerning. But I must say, in relation to Jeff Kennett, I have no doubt that he is eminently qualified to be the chairman of a large organisation. But what I find curious is that Jeff Kennett, through his terrific advocacy and terrific work for Beyond Blue, an organisation that has helped so many Australians battle depression, I think there is some irony in the fact that if he takes on this role at the Star Casino, there is a clear link between gambling, problem gambling and depression. So I'd be interested to hear what Mr Kennett would say about reconciling his role at Beyond Blue and running a gambling organisation where there is a clear link between gambling, problem gambling and severe depression.
But see, isn't that the point? He could argue that he could bring the skills he has garnered as the head of this anti-depression body to help curb problem gambling in the casinos.
And that's why I'm looking forward to his explanation. So if he does that, then that might be a good thing. But the fact is, there is a very clear link between problem gambling and depression, and being involved in an organisation of that size, where clearly problem gambling is a byproduct of having gambling offered in that way. I just think it's a curious choice.
OK, Nick Xenophon, we'll leave it there. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Michael.